Don't forget the mission. We must never lose sight of our ultimate goal in standing up against unrighteousness. God has not called us to save our country. Instead, He has commanded us to save those who are living in our country from His coming judgment. Salt restores nothing. It only buys us a little more time to shine the light of the gospel in an increasingly dark world. Allow me to be blunt. Outlawing same-sex marriages, reducing the number of abortions performed each year, or displaying the Ten Commandments in every classroom in America will not increase the eventual population of heaven by one solitary person, apart from the proclamation of the gospel. In fact, if we are not careful, we could actually decrease the number of people in heaven if we ever compromise our long-range mission to achieve short-term goals. When a prominent Christian leader joins with a popular member of a non-Christian cult to fight immorality and justifies the alliance by saying, "We have to save America first and then worry about theology," he is telegraphing the not-so-subtle message that temporal concerns supersede eternal issues. Most people have been conditioned to relegate theology to irrelevant issues like the number of angels dancing on the head of a pin, or speculative topics such as predestination and free will. However, theology is the study of God. What could be more important than a person's understanding of his Creator and what He requires of His creatures? As A.W. Tozer wrote, "What comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us." A person's belief about God shapes his life on earth and determines his destiny for eternity. When Christian leaders imply that differences between Christianity and a cult like Mormonism are minimal compared to their agreement on social concerns, we're in danger of jeopardizing our unique mission to be lights in this dark world. I was recently invited to lead a pro-life march of several thousand people in Dallas to the Dallas City Courthouse where the landmark case Roe v. Wade, legalizing abortion in America, began. The march was to begin in front of another church that denies that faith in Christ alone is the only way to be saved. By joining hands with the leader of that church and marching together to protest abortion, what message would I be communicating? Is it possible that someone seeing me alongside this religious leader might assume that the differences in our beliefs are inconsequential? Could my actions cause someone to become part of that congregation and embrace a belief system that will result in his eternal separation from God? Would I have not only surrendered, but actually sabotaged my most important calling as a Christian in order to achieve a lesser goal? Honestly, I'm still wrestling with those issues. However, I'm certain that in heaven, abortions will be non-existent, since there will be no death. In the eternal state, there will be no same-sex marriages, or marriages of any kind for that matter. When Christ reigns over the earth, there will be no need to display the Ten Commandments anywhere, since God's law will be written on the heart of every occupant of heaven. The culture war will eventually be won in the new heaven and the new earth. But the real war that is raging on earth right now is a spiritual war for the eternal souls of every human being. Paul describes our enemy's goal in that war. And even if our gospel is veiled, it is veiled to those who are perishing, in whose case the God of this world has blinded the minds of the unbelieving, so that they may not see the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. 2 Corinthians 4, 3-4. Satan, the god of this world, is working overtime to blind unbelievers to the light of the gospel, so they will remain in darkness for all eternity. As those who have been charged with the responsibility to hold out the light of the gospel, we must not diminish or diffuse that light by sacrificing the eternal for the temporal. Curing serious but short-term social ills should never take precedence over healing man's spiritual sickness. After all, Cultural maladies are simply symptoms of a much more dangerous disease. In the pages that follow, we will seek to find the balance between standing up for righteousness in order to preserve our culture from premature destruction and shining bright with the unique message of the gospel. However, don't confuse balance with passivity. Whatever we do, we cannot allow complacency to neutralize our resolve to fight evil or jeopardize our ultimate mission of pointing people to Christ. Remember, being salt and light does not have to be an either-or proposition. As Christians, we must be both. While it is true that far too many Christians remained silent during the rise of Nazi Germany, there was a remnant of believers who stood tall against the tide of evil without compromising their ultimate message. Albert Einstein, a Jew who was exiled from Germany, made this startling confession about how a small but determined group of believers interested him in Christianity. Being a lover of freedom, when the Nazi Revolution came, I looked to the universities to defend it, knowing that they had always boasted of their devotion to the cause of truth. But no, the universities took refuge in silence. Then I looked to the great editors of the newspapers, whose flaming editorials in days gone by had proclaimed their love of freedom. But they, like the universities, were silenced in a few short weeks. I then addressed myself to the authors, to those who had passed themselves off as the intellectual guides of Germany, and among whom was frequently discussed the question of freedom and its place in modern life. They are, in turn, very dumb. Only the church stood squarely across the path of Hitler's campaign for suppressing the truth. I never had any special interest in the church before, but now I feel a great affection and admiration for it because the church alone had the courage and persistence to stand for intellectual truth and moral freedom. I am forced to confess that what I once despised, I now praise unreservedly. Once again, there is a tidal wave of evil that is threatening to overwhelm our country. If we sit on the sidelines, we not only ensure the destruction of our nation, but consign countless souls to an eternity of separation from God. It is time for the church to stand up for righteousness and shine brightly with the gospel of Jesus Christ. We must not allow evil to triumph during the twilight years of America.